Welcome to Legends of Culture, a podcast where we get real stories from real leaders about how they have created world-class organizational cultures. I'm your host, Jared Oakes. I'm the Chief Culture Officer at a large law firm, Benish, and a lifelong student of what it takes to create teams that thrive. Together, we'll dive into candid conversations with founders, owners, and C-suite leaders whose organizations are all in on their people and whose people are all in for each other. Whether you're building a business, leading a team, or just curious about what makes great workplaces tick, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Legends of Culture. We're really fortunate today to have my friend Chris Halapy with us. Chris is the CEO of Shook Construction. He's also a father, and he's a husband and a wonderful guy, native Ohioan, and he's a Dayton Flyer. Yep. And so we, most importantly for my relationship with Chris and I both recently finished Leadership Cleveland. We were the class of 2025, which is reverently referred to as the dopest class ever. So we're excited to be a member of that class. And that was for me, it was a really kind of like life-changing experience. It was a deeper experience than I expected it to be. But one of the things out of that is I got to meet Chris, and as you all know, the Legends of Culture podcast is all around like finding people who are all in on their employees and creating amazing organizational cultures. So when I got to know Chris and learned what he's doing at Shook, I thought, wow, this is awesome. You got to be a guest. So thanks for being on.
I'm very appreciative. Thank you for that nice intro. And I will say I don't know that I'm an appropriate subject of this podcast. I thought maybe I was coming as a co-moderator or something like that. But if it's the task at hand, I'll do my best to fill it.
Yeah. Well, one thing really jumped out to me when we talked before about just like your career and about Shook and everything that like made me think, because it's an angle that we have not really tackled on Legends of Culture so far, and that is you are a success in the sense of going from like intern to CEO. That doesn't happen very often,
Sure.
Especially with one company. Maybe it used to, like way back in the day, but I found that really fascinating. And along the way, when you were telling me about, I'm not going to tell the story, but I want you to tell it, but like around the investment that your company has always made and continues to make in like your employees, I thought that's a very unique angle, and especially like, giving people responsibility. So I'm excited to talk to you about that kind of stuff. We always like to start off though by like getting to know you personally. So,
Sure.
Can you give the audience like just a view of your life? How'd you grow up?
Yes.
What shaped you as a kid and as a adolescent?
Sure. No, thank you. Native Clevelander, born in Cleveland, born in Parma, a little bit on the south side. And my family, I'm the youngest of three. Which allows you to kind of be the manipulator, quite frankly. Like, I could kind of watch what my brother and my sister did and then figure out what path I wanted to navigate, which I guess I consider to be a blessing. But my parents, neither of my parents were able to go to college, not because they weren't capable of it, but their family situation and their finances did not allow that. So one of the things that I think they did exceptionally for us, really a blessing for us, was my parents highly value education. And I think it's to me, it's kind of one of the founding principles of our country and, free public education in America is this idea that education is a path to a better life and a better existence. So when I was 5, I was the youngest. We actually moved to Brecksville, to this little kind of house on the edge of town. And that was a conscious decision on my parents' part because they felt like it may be a better school district for us. And it turned out I didn't go to the Parma school, so I don't know that. I'm not trying to disparage them, but it turned out to be a good decision for my brother and sister and I. And so they pulled off this magical thing that I know you're a parent, you'll probably appreciate. We knew that we always knew we were going to college. We always knew my parents had no ability to pay for it. And those two things never felt in conflict to us, right? It was just an expectation that we were going to get educated and we were going to figure out how to pay for it. And that was part of it. So I think there were some really great lessons in that for the three of us as kids. We didn't have a lot of material things, but we had a great family. Yeah. We had love and care and energy and all of those things that are, I would argue, the foundational things that matter a lot more than maybe the material things do. So, I think, that builds hopefully that builds a work ethic. It builds a and at some point a hunger to create a better, to create a better existence for yourself and for, for your children. So.
Yeah, it was funny. A lot of overlap there. I'm the youngest of three. And people joke like there's a black sheep in every family or whatever, and I always joke that I'm the only white sheep in my family. Like my brother set a low bar for me, so like I was always like, oh, this is easy. I can make my parents happy. But like that was like, but I think we both I learned from the mistakes of my brothers, and that helped me a lot. And I also I think it was the only person. My mom went to nursing school, but not 4-year. I was the only person that was able to go to 4-year college, but the work ethic they instilled in me and the value of education was strong. So really similar overlap there.
Right.
Although I grew up in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania, not in the posh suburbs of Cleveland.
Yeah. Well, not to beat up on our siblings too hard. I learned a lot from the things they did well too.
Good.
But like myself personally, I have very little recall of my rare moments of success. But every scar I can point out to you and tell you the story. Right. We learn from the struggle, and I think, to your point about being a parent, one of the things that I feel strongly about, and I won't suggest that it's easy in practice or that my wife and I are perfect at it, but letting your kids struggle, letting your employees struggle, right? That's where the lessons come from, and that's where the resilience is built. That's where the coping mechanisms come from, and I think. I will say I do think as a society we've probably gone the wrong direction there. I think there's a lot of kind of bubble wrapping of kids and employees in the name of protecting them. And then one day the big bad world comes after you in middle school or high school or college or whenever it may be. And if mom and dad aren't there to bubble wrap you or your employer isn't there, it can be really hard. And I think so trying to help let people, I don't want anybody to fail catastrophically, but like little failures every day are part of what make us who we are.
I think that's awesome. I struggle with that. I feel like I want that badly for my kids. And one of the things I've been afraid of as someone who came from not a lot of means and have, had been blessed to have like financial success in my life and business success is sort of like, how do you instill the grit and the desire and the willpower to overcome hard things when just by the nature of how we live, life is pretty easy comparatively, know? And so I've been reading a lot about like the difference between like helicopter parents, which we all know that negative connotation, and like sort of like lighthouse parents. And we've heard that term or not, but it's sort of like you're the beacon, you're there if something bad were to happen, but like really try to like let them steer. And I feel like I'm getting there with my oldest. My oldest is a junior, so he's 16 now.
Sure.
And my daughters are 14 and 11. They're not there yet, right? The lessons are different that they need to learn, right? But even through like coaching, you see them playing sports and things like that, and just sort of like saying like it's okay for your coach to be hard on you and to get because it means they care, And so little lessons like
kind
that.
of firm but fair, right? I'm always a believer in firm but fair, but yeah, it is. It's you and I are similar, I think, in that we're fortunate for the upbringing we had. It's created much of what we are. The challenge is it also has motivated us to create something different and better, and having the wherewithal to think critically about, okay, how do I do this in a way that it is beneficial, but I don't lose the things that create the grit and the resilience and it's, I would argue it's a lot of days probably the hardest challenge of parenting.
Yeah. Was there anything when you were growing up, like whether it was a coach or a leader or anything, or maybe just your parents, like that, like you felt like there's like any defining moments or periods of time that like really like instilled in you like your core beliefs around like how I'm going to act as an adult or as a leader?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we could probably spend this whole podcast answering this question just in terms of the people that we're all a product of our environment and the people that have helped you, coaches for sure along the way. Honestly, I point to my parents and maybe specifically to my dad in this specific answer, but my father is a carpenter. And his story is kind of interesting quickly. His dad died when he was 13, had cancer, died quickly, mom and 3 sisters, and basically had to become the man of the house in those days very quickly and went to work immediately. I mean, he would stock shelves at a grocery store at night, go straight to school, go home, sleep for a few hours, and go back to work. That was from 13 on his existence. He became a carpenter, and interestingly, in our business and our need for workforce and trying to help young people see the value of the trades, my dad said, hey, that's a profession, that's a career I can get into quickly that has a pension, that has medical benefits, that has a living wage. That's my best near-term path. And he went and got a carpenter's apprenticeship and became a carpenter. But to answer the question, he would always do side jobs at night and on the weekends to raise extra money. And part of it is he sent all three of us to parochial school on probably not the means to generally get there, but he hustled.
Yeah.
He hustled. And so my brother and I would work with him. And my dad taught us that the way the side jobs worked when we worked with my dad was if the side job made money, we got paid. And if the side job didn't make money, we didn't get paid. And the more money it made, the more we got paid. So very quickly I learned like, hey, I need to understand the goal of what we're here to accomplish, and I need to hustle my butt off to help make sure that collectively we accomplish the goal.
Yeah.
And
That's awesome.
What a huge lesson. You know, and thankfully, I mean, we were profitable a lot more often than we weren't, but every once in a while when you weren't, you know, and I love my brother. I'll pick on him for this because he and my dad and I are pretty similar. My brother and my dad are a little more oil and water. They would butt heads, and like my brother never figured out the line of like, if the job's going well, like you can sit and talk about the Browns and you can tell jokes. And if the job's not going well, just shut up and work. And he was the one that would always like crack a joke right when it wasn't going well. And like, you know, you saw it, my dad would look at him like, I think he's going to hit you with a 2x4. Can you just shut up right now? You know, but I thankfully as the youngest maybe was able to observe and learn when to shut up.
Right. I love situations like that because I think it provides an immense opportunity to learn the traits that your dad had through osmosis, because it's not like, you know, if you're think of a parent, even yourself, like if you like want to instill things in your kids, like you don't have often the time to be like, okay, you know, Johnny or Sally, like here's what I want to teach you about this. But like you, by seeing your dad work hard, having him teach you about like not just to work hard, but how the economics of things work. Like you can learn really important skills, you know, through like just observing. And I think that's more powerful. Like it's much more powerful to see your parent or whoever your influence is do something than it is to have them tell you to do something, right?
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to, in response to that, I'm going to preview something that I promise I will say again sometime between now and when we're done. It is exactly aligned with culture. Words matter, actions matter a lot more.
Yes.
People hear what you say, they're paying attention to everything you do.
Right.
And that's that power of leadership by example, because at the end of the day, you know, you're modeling the behaviors that you desire. And that's what, you know, my dad and my mom in her own way, but that's what my dad did in that specific example for us was he modeled the behaviors that, you know, that we needed to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. So you grew up, went to Dayton. Talk a little bit about Dayton, and then talk about, you know, how that led to your co-op and like your entree into Shook.
Sure.
Yeah.
I went to Dayton. My brother went to Miami. My sister went to Dayton. I followed her. And Dayton's an amazing place in that there's 8,000 undergrad students at UD. And I always said, it was big enough that I met somebody new every day. It was small enough that I never went anywhere and didn't at least make eye contact with somebody that I had a class with or was in the dorm with. So there was kind of there was big enough to challenge you, but small enough that there was a comfort in it, if you will. And the culture there, back to culture, is amazing. It's a values-driven university. It's a Marianist. It's a you know, a Catholic university, but that's not, I mean, none of that is hung over your head or beaten into you. It's kind of there, but it's there in the underlying values. It's kind of a servant leadership culture, a humble servant leadership culture. So I think that was probably, I didn't realize it at the time, but probably formative for me. So I was in the civil engineering program, needed to do summer internships. Always knew I wanted to come back here, close to my family, close to my friends. And a long story for another day that I won't tell right now, but I ended up with an internship with Shook, who was founded and is headquartered in Dayton,
Mm-hmm.
but in the Cleveland office, which happens to be in Brecksville, about 60 seconds from where my mom and dad still live
Mm-hmm.
today. So that worked out. That was super convenient. And I had done an internship. When you're in civil engineering, there are multiple things you can do, but generally you either become a designer
Mm-hmm.
or you become a contractor. Those are the two primary paths. And I knew I wanted to do an internship in each because I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I knew that I enjoyed construction from working with my dad, and I worked for an engineering firm. This is not an affront against engineering. The work itself was fine. The culture was horrible.
Mm.
I mean, it was a small family-owned business. It was a mess, and anything that went wrong often was caused by a family member and blamed on a non-family member.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this isn't like 90 days at like 19 or 20 years old. You could
Yeah.
figure this out. And I always say, like, you talk about the power of culture. I'm a worker. Like, I'll get in early, I'll grind, I'll stay late. That's the only job I've ever had in my life that if I got to work 5 minutes early, I sat in my car in the parking lot for 5 minutes before I went in the building.
Mm-hmm.
That's the power of culture.
Right.
So I knew I didn't want to go back there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got this internship at Shook. And again, the work was fine. Work is work. The culture was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was like, oh, like, I like these people.
Yeah.
And we're good to each other. And like, people take ownership of their actions. And so at that very young age, I very quickly said, like, oh, if I'm in a culture that works for me,
Mm-hmm.
then I trust I'll do my best work. And things like compensation and perks and all that, that stuff's a result. That'll follow the quality of the work that I do. And
Yeah.
I need to get into a culture
Mm-hmm.
that will support me.
Mm-hmm.
And then fortunately, I got a full-time opportunity at Shook. And
Mm-hmm.
here
That's
I am
great
today.
perspective to have at that age in particular, because now it might have helped you that you saw a
Yes.
really negative culture. Because often I find when I'm like interviewing young lawyers or giving people advice on like where should I go after law school or work, and so the often like it's sort of like there's like a proxy of size for like being whether it's sophisticated or more prestigious, and so like oh the bigger the better, or XYZ, or like I'll just go for like whatever pays me the most. And I think that I always caution people to like really consider what is it going to be like. You're going to spend more time with these people than you will with your family probably.
Correct.
In many instances, and so you really want to find a place that's amazing. So like it's
And it's hard, like in
yeah.
the interview process, and especially when you're young and who do you know and who do you ask. Probably what's most frustrating to me is when I see like mid-career people make a jump from what I think is a good culture to a not good culture, maybe for the wrong reasons. And it's like, come on, man. Like,
Yeah.
you're around, you know people, ask questions. But I will tell you that today, work is work. I have bad days at work like you do and like everybody else. And there are still days where I'm driving home after a rough day and I think about that engineering firm and I go, you know what? I'm not there. Like, this is fine. We will solve this. We care about each other. We take care of each other. Tomorrow will be a better day. And
Yeah.
you kind of compartmentalize it and you get up in the morning and you go get after it again. And so it is a lesson that sticks with you. It's one of those stars on the fingers, you know?
So you did your co-op, but then you had to go back to the Dayton to finish up before, and then you started full time after that.
Yeah, and honestly, it's funny. When I graduated, the economy was very strong, and I got multiple job offers, which probably had more to do with the economy than with me. But I had better financial job offers than the job offer I had from Shook. Now, relatively speaking, I probably remember what you got paid when you started and what I did, and it wasn't a ton back then.
Right.
But a couple $1,000s here or there is material at that time. And I just had, that's one of the, maybe a moment I'm proud of from a maturity standpoint, is I said, you know what? There's risk in these places of what it's going to be. I know what this place is, and I'm going to go there and I'm going to go crush it. And I trust good things will follow. That $2,000 on my W-2 will wipe itself away pretty quickly if I go there and I'm doing my best work. You know, and, turned out to be a good decision.
Definitely. One story for you before we leave University of Dayton. I'm wearing this shirt that we can see. It says
Yeah, I want to know
BCL.
about this. Tell me about BCL.
Yeah, so BCL is it's a nonprofit that I'm a huge fan of and try to support as much as I can financially. My son is really into competitive basketball, and he plays on a few different AAU basketball teams. And AAU basketball and travel sports generally is an expensive proposition for kids, but it's also the way they get exposure to, especially big time college opportunities. And so BCL, I met the founder of BCL and learned about it. It's called Basketball Changes Lives, and it's a nonprofit that essentially funds this opportunity for underprivileged kids, mostly inner city kids, to get a chance to play, at tournaments that are larger and out of town mostly, and that have, like very competitive teams and everything like that. And so but I also get a lot out of it. It's a lot of fun. So my son plays with them, and I was at a tournament with him in Cincinnati, and every time we go anywhere, he's also in like the period of like where anytime we're in a city that we're not normally in, he's like, I want to go see what colleges are near there. And so we were in Cincinnati, we had downtime, and I said, hey, why don't we drive up to the University of Dayton? I'll show you guys. It's a great D1 basketball program. And so we drove up, and, knowing that you went to Dayton made me think of it, and that's why I wore the shirt today. But I was able to sneak them into the arena. It was a day where nothing really was going on at the arena, but there was, the facilities people were there, and the kids that were with me were very clearly like future big-time basketball players by their size, and like I just said to the facilities guy, like, these are Dayton prospects, and I'm supposed to show them around, and kind of like didn't lie, but it sort of lied. I guess they snuck them in, but we got to go check it out, and they got down like close to the floor and everything, and they thought that was really cool. And so I also I had never been there before. I loved Dayton's campus; it was really cool. So
great campus, great basketball school. I mean, if you're a mid-major level talent, and they put 14,000 people in that arena every night, win, lose, or draw, the support for that team is amazing. And actually, one of their big supporters is Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle lives in Yellow Springs, Ohio, which is a suburb of Dayton, and he sits courtside for UD basketball games.
That's
often.
Great. I didn't know that. That's great.
Yeah, he's a riot. You can go to the Yellow Springs Brewing Company and sit outside on the patio and have a beer, and often Dave Chappelle will be there. And as long as you don't like fanboy on him and you just treat him like a regular guy, he'll sit and talk to you and tell stories. And
that's cool. That's really cool.
Interesting little corner of America.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's go back to now. Like, okay, you're starting your career, first, I think now's a good time to kind of like tell us about Shook. What is it? What's the company like? How's it changed over time, and stuff like that before we get into your career there.
Sure. Yeah, I'll try to do it briefly. So we were founded in 1926. So we turn 100 next year. We're in centennial planning right now, but by a Mr. Shook, who was a cool story, cool guy. He was an architect by training. And imagine this is the Industrial Revolution, 1926, America's, going nuts, factories, building. And his architecture firm was designing industrial projects, and contractors were not bidding them because they did not have capacity to do the work. So he quietly set up a construction company and resigned from his architecture firm on Friday and opened a construction firm on Monday, and pretty soon was the low and only bidder on multiple jobs that his prior firm had designed. So he had work immediately. What he didn't foresee was October of 1929 and what was going to happen in America. And we still have all the original board books and board minutes and everything. And there was like a 4 or 5 year period in the early 1930s where he paid himself $1 a year and just to keep the company afloat. Entrepreneurial, risk taker, resilient, whatever, those adjectives. So fast forward, Mr. Shook has a heart attack at a business lunch in 1964 with zero succession plan. So he was all those things I just said, but he clearly didn't have an idea of what should come next.
Yeah.
Bank wanted his estate to liquidate the company. His top men at the time, 4 of them, went to the family and said, and none of his kids were involved in the business, and said, we'd like to buy it. They sold it. So then we went from privately held family owned to privately held non-family owned. Fast forward through time and attrition, pretty soon in the late 90s, one of those 4 pretty much owned the company. So we're kind of in that second trap of privately held businesses. He was getting late in life, and he ended up essentially giving the company to his employees. He had 2 sons, and one was a priest and one was a doctor, and neither one of them needed money or construction. So we've been a privately held, non-family owned business. And I think
So are you structured as an ESOP?
Nope.
No.
Nope. So we're an S corp. There's
Mhm.
a group of employee owners, active
Mhm.
employee owners. So it's kind of like a mini ESOP in a way.
Mhm.
Um, but I think I give you that setup because it speaks a little bit too to kind of culturally what we are. Then um, we're a commercial builder. I probably should have started there. So we're a commercial builder. Our offices are Cleveland, Columbus, Dayton, Indianapolis, and Raleigh.
Mhm.
So Midwest and then down into the Mid Atlantic. We went to the Mid Atlantic strategically because it was growth area.
Yeah.
You know, Columbus, Ohio is a growth area. Thankfully, Cleveland and Dayton and Indianapolis have shown some of that. But for a long time in Cleveland, you fixed old things more than you built
Mhm.
new things,
Right.
right? Um, so, um, but we primarily build half of our business. We build water and wastewater treatment plants. So, like the regional sewer district is a big client of ours. For instance, um, we build manufacturing facilities, schools, and hospitals.
Mhm.
And the reality of it is, we're a proud general contractor. If you put a set of plans on the table, we could probably figure out how to build it.
Mhm.
But people want specialists,
Yeah.
right? Your son hurts his knee playing basketball tonight. Your first thought is what? How do I get him to the orthopedic?
Right.
Right? It's not how do I get him to his family practice doctor so he can take his temperature and then tell us that we need to go to the orthopedic.
Mhm.
Well, that's what people want in their contractor
Yeah.
too, right? Like I want a specialist that builds manufacturing buildings, or I want a specialist that builds hospitals. And for us, we feel like those four things in America are sustainable. They're things we believe in.
Mhm.
We believe in healthcare in America. We believe in education. We believe in made in the USA. And I'm pretty sure we all want the water to be clean when it comes out of the tap, and we want to know it's going to go somewhere and not pollute the environment.
Yeah.
So, although they have their ups and downs, those are generally pretty solid,
Mhm.
sustainable markets for us.
Yeah.
But so maybe to wrap that though, so what's interesting is we have a culture of we have a lot of long tenured, loyal employees.
Mhm.
I'm actually the fifth consecutive CEO who has either started as a college intern or first job out of college. So
Yeah, that is noteworthy. The audience to hear that again. So, like, say that again.
I'm the fifth consecutive CEO that has started as either a college intern or first job out of college. We've had 7 total CEOs. The last 5, my 4 predecessors all retired with 40 plus years of service
Mhm.
to the organization.
Yeah, I mean that is in and of itself an objective measure of really positive culture. There's no way that would happen without
Right.
having an amazing culture.
Now, the flip side of that is because, your greatest strength is your greatest weakness, right?
Mhm.
The flip side of that is it's very easy to become insular
Mhm.
and kind of let the place be an echo chamber. So we have had to work very hard intentionally to gather outside perspective, be it from peer groups, be it from a board of advisors, from outside partners. But we've also had to, and one of the things I'm proud of in my tenure and my predecessor's tenure is we really had to relearn how to welcome mid-career in their prime talent into our company
Mhm.
and not get tribal on them and like let ourselves or our people kind of close the teepee door.
Mhm. Yeah.
Say you're not one of us, you don't
Yeah.
get to smoke the peace pipe.
How do you do that? How have you been able to do that?
The key thing is you have to find people that align with your core values.
Mhm.
And then if you message it, if you lead by example, what I have found is once our people started getting over the hump to say, oh, I know Jared didn't grow up here, but holy cow, is he talented.
Mhm.
And his experience is different than our experience, and we need that. But most importantly, he's like us.
Yeah.
Like he's honest, he's ethical, he's hardworking. And we just kind of, it was a little harder at first, but once you made a couple really good hires and ran a little interference for him, and then people started going, oh boy, this guy's not a threat. He's not going to change. Yes, he's going to change who we are, but it's going to be better. It's not going to be worse, right? Most of us were raised by fear. So our immediate response to any change is a fear
Right.
reaction.
Yeah.
So you got to kind of help coach them through. And once they get a couple positive reactions in a row, but then you have to stay disciplined in that recruiting and hiring. Fit is more important than skills.
Yeah, for sure. So you're in Ohio, Indiana, North Carolina.
Yep.
One thing I love on I don't want to butcher it and get it wrong. But your mission statement is all about communities, right?
Yeah,
Like
to dramatically improve the communities we serve.
yeah. I think that's a big part of culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is sort of like what is your impact on the communities in which you do business?
Yep.
The and also like when you have, I'm sure that Dayton is your headquarters and your founding office. So each city likely has its own culture, right? The in my
Kind
firm,
of little
that's like us, right? Like
subcultures.
yeah. We try to have things that we have like sort of like permeate the entire culture, but then we also try to let each office have its own culture. In some offices, our Chicago office, we have 4 floors. And I feel like each floor has its own sort of like little microculture.
Yep.
Does it feel like that for you guys? Like the
Yeah, it does. And like imagine like in Raleigh, North Carolina, right? It's the South is different than the North,
Yeah.
right? We joke with them all the time about the war of Northern aggression, right? And so yeah, I think if you try, it's like anything. If you try it, it's like a golf swing, right? If you hold the club too tight, nothing good happens,
Yeah.
right? So it's finding that right level of grip, if you will, in terms of like how do we drive the core values through the organization, but then let the cultural kind of regional differences that want to exist and embrace them. Like one of the things I love about Greater Cleveland is honestly a lot of ways like New York City. Cleveland's a borough city,
Yeah.
right? You can go to Little Italy, and Little Italy is different than Slavic Village. That doesn't make one of them right or wrong. The beauty is in what makes them unique, right? Or Tremont, or the Warehouse District, or Hingetown, or at the end of the day, they're all Greater Cleveland. We'll all get up and cheer for the Guardians together, if you will. But the uniqueness of each of those areas is part of what makes them interesting and makes people proud to be part of it, right?
Yeah.
The third floor in Chicago, darn it, they're proud of being on the third floor in Chicago, if you will, and they're going to fight for it. And I think there's value in that.
Yeah, I agree. So for you, what are the things that you view to be like really like core to your culture, like that you want to be the same no matter whether you're in Raleigh or in Cleveland
Right.
or Dayton?
Well, I'll tell a little story if I can.
Yeah.
That'll lead up to it because it's been part of my learning and maturation, but it's really been an important part of our company story. So I say this all the time. We're going to turn 100 next year. If you were at our company 10, 15 years ago, it felt like an 85-year-old company. Today, I think it feels like a 25-year-old company. And I'm really proud of that. And I'm not the creator of that. I have a role in it. My predecessor, Bill Whistler, gets a lot of credit, admittedly. But we had a leader 2 iterations back, wonderful man named Frank Klein. He's passed on, unfortunately. Frank was the right person at the right time for some things our business needed in terms of he was an engineer. He was a process guy. We needed some tightening up of controls and processes. Where Frank was flawed is that Frank didn't understand the value of culture. He was a strategy guy. And I swear on my life, Jared, we've always been good about strategic planning. I will take this to my grave. We were in a strategic planning session when Frank first became CEO, and he said, hey, we're going to put together a new strategic plan. And invariably, your facilitator tends to start with mission, vision, values, and let's review them and determine if they're still appropriate, because they kind of set the vision of where we're going. And Frank he had this tell. He would have been a terrible poker player. Whenever he would start jingling the change or the keys in his pocket whenever the conversation was going too long or the meeting was going the wrong direction. And he gets up and he starts pacing the back of the room, jingling his change. And a couple minutes in, he interrupts the facilitator and says, hey, with all due respect, we don't have time for this BS. Let's get to strategy. And we had a 5-year period in our company where we did not have a stated mission, vision, or values. And although we tightened up our processes, our results went down over those 5 years. Bill, my predecessor, came in, launched his own strategic plan, and the first thing he said to the facilitator was, we have to get the mission, vision, values right. If we run out of time and can't get the strategy, don't worry about it. We'll take care of that later.
Right.
I mean, 180 degrees. And that's where we worked really hard on who are we? Why do we exist? And this idea of to dramatically improve the communities we serve. And I take a very broad definition of community. It could truly be the town, as literal as the town we're working in. It could be the floor of the hospital we're renovating. It can be our project team in the trailer. It's your family. The idea is as simple as like, leave it better than you found it. Right? Whether it's a person, a process, a project. We think that that's our reason to exist, and we happen to bring it forth through tangible building of projects. But it's really about building community at the end of the day.
Yeah. It reminded me of like the mantra of like sort of like the culture eat strategy for lunch. I think that when you have a strong culture and when you really focus on those aspects of it, it goes also to the sort of like the old, Simon Sinek, circle, right? Like people, they care about why you do things, not what you do, right? And so or the how you do it.
The Maya Angelou quote, right? They don't remember what you said, but they remember how you made them feel.
Exactly.
Kind of thing.
Right. And if you can get everybody like truly buying into your organization, the strategy is going to work itself out.
Right. And that's what we needed. Was we lacked alignment. We had talented people, but we weren't aligned around a common purpose or a common vision. And that's what Bill really set the stage for, was to create that alignment. And then I like to speak in analogies. It helps me paint the picture, but it's like tug of war, right? You can have the biggest, strongest tug of war team, and we could all be little guys like me, but if we all pull at the same direction at the same time in rhythm, we can pull your team over if your guys are out of sync, right? Or imagine the crew boat with the coxswain at the front. If you get everybody paddling at the same time, and that's what we lacked, that we have been able to create, is that alignment that lets you really leverage the talent and move and then the it's capitalism. Profitability is not a bad word, but that's a result. That's a measure.
That's right.
At the end of the day. So what we had to figure out was like, we had to get the alignment and get the effort right and trust that the result will follow. And it has. And then that's great, because then it becomes cyclical, because then your ability to invest in doing the right thing by community gets easier as you earn that profit. And then you can get the flywheel spinning even faster and faster.
Yeah. Is there anything you feel like that is like, that you struggle with still culturally, that you're like, oh, I wish we could solve this problem?
Yes, because culture takes work. It is work. I am a believer that you have to intentionally create the culture you want. And if you choose to not, or choose to ignore it, you're going to have a culture. You're going to get it unintentionally.
Right.
But the reality is, our business is growing and changing. Our world is changing maybe more rapidly than it ever has, at a faster pace than it ever has in history. And our culture has to be evolving with it. And it's one of those things that does take hard work. And there are moments where you feel like, hey, we've gotten this to a really good place. It's better than what it was. And you want to pause and you want to take a breath. And there's not a lot of time for that. You have to keep working at evolving your culture. So that's a lot of what we're doing. And an example in our industry would be safety is really important in what we do. The legacy of construction is to set up a safety team almost like an audit team. And it's almost like based on lack of trust. Like, oh, we're going to assume the operations people are cutting corners unless we're there to police them and catch them. Right? Versus, no, we're going to work in partnership. We're going to have alignment around the goal. The operations people are going to be doing the right thing. But this is a complicated and a risky business, and there are days where they need extra support. So moving our safety culture to a better place of partnership and proactive approach versus reactive and kind of policing and auditing is something that is work. And it's, because you have to get people to get out of legacy thinking and show them that there's a different way and earn their trust to go down that path with you until they start to see some results and go, oh, wait. Like this can work. This works. And that's part of the value to me of outside perspective. Go find the best at whatever you want to be great at and study them. Right? Your son wants to be an awesome basketball player. Dig up some Michael Jordan tapes. Figure out how he worked, how he practiced, how he and in our businesses, we have to do the same thing. And okay, who's doing this better than we are? How are they doing it? How do we adapt it to what we're doing? And let's go make a go of it.
Yeah, I agree with that completely too. On the flip side of the sort of the challenge aspect, is there something that you feel like this is like the holy grail of our culture? Like we could never change this, or it changes who we are.
Well, I think adherence to core values and hiring to core values, I think is critical. And honestly, retaining to core value. I mean, I think values as much illuminate who should be in the business, and they also illuminate who should not be in the business. And having the courage to say, like, hey, Jared is super smart and he's super talented, but he is on a different path than the rest of us from a values perspective, and there's probably a better place for him to apply his talents than here. So to me, I think, and our values evolve. We actually just refreshed them a year or so ago, and that's because I think that your values should be core. They should be what make you special and unique, but they should have an aspirational element to them too. You know, if you're going to achieve your vision, these are the behaviors that are going to facilitate us achieving our vision. And I think if you're advancing, a day will come where your current values start to feel like table stakes. You know, it's kind of like they belong more in the employee manual than on the wall. Like,
Right.
It's kind of like if you aren't doing that, you're just not going to be here. And what is the next aspirational frontier behaviorally that's going to move us towards best in class?
Right.
So I think, I don't know if that's a fair answer to your question, but I think that alignment around hiring, recruiting, retaining to our values, and at the same point recognizing that they have to continue to grow and we have to be pushing ourselves on that front as well.
I think that, I mean, it definitely does. And I think that you make me think of my own company, right? Our I work at Benesch, is a pretty large law firm, and we have grown substantially. In the last 10 years, we've probably tripled, in size, which is a lot for a law firm. And we've done it all through individual hires. We haven't acquired any law firms. We have no aspirations to acquire law firms. We have no aspirations to be acquired. And it's a pretty organic process. But what that's allowed us to do, and I think that's really a big part of our secret sauce, so to speak, is that we are very intentional on hiring on the way in of like, is this person the right fit for us? Not just are they an excellent lawyer, or not is it just they have a lot of business? It's do they fit with what we want and what we are and sort of like who we are as a culture. And I was concerned, not to think we couldn't do it, but especially as we go to different geographies that are not like the Midwest, right? So we have now, we've grown a lot in New York City, and we've grown, I think we're the fastest growing law firm in Chicago. We've grown a lot in San Francisco, and those markets didn't exist for us 5 years ago, or maybe 7 years ago. And so when we created a very formalized culture initiative at Benesch, it was really focused on how do we not lose what it is we are as we grow? How do we continue to sort of enhance, the things we're great at and make ourselves better, but really focusing on, the hiring, like we try to have like a no asshole rule, so to speak. Really, and it's sort of like the when you hire that many people bring their muscle memory from their other places, and so I do like a level setting thing when people join, sort of like expectation setting around culture, and so I do it every 6 weeks or so. I talk to whether they're a partner or whether they're a paralegal. People who join, I talk to them about like, okay, I don't know what it was like where you came from here. Like this isn't the kind of place. If you thought you had to yell at people at your prior place to get the results you want, if you were at a place where people yelled at you, and that's what your expectation is, that's not how we are here. Like it's a place where we care about one another, we have each other's backs, and things like that, and that really resonates with people. And it's been very helpful so that people don't like, even for a short period of time, hopefully like exercise that bad muscle memory that they might have, because law practice is not the like construction, not the kindest, gentlest practice in many ways, right? So like the
it's a little bit of can be a locker room kind of mentality, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, in your role as like chief culture officer, is a lot of that focus around creating intentionality in those type of steps, and how are we going to recruit the right people? How are we going to onboard them in a way that enhances the culture, not detracts from it?
Yeah. So the chief culture officer role and the culture initiative, when we started it, a lot of it was around like on the front end, especially like diagnostics, what I would say is like, what's the baseline of what is our culture? What's great about it? How do we make it better? How do we maximize the good? How do we minimize the bad? And so for, I don't know, 14 months or so, I worked with another partner in our Chicago office, and we interviewed every lawyer at the firm, and it was labor intensive. It was we interviewed every partner individually, and we interviewed the associates in focus groups. But that's 400 and something people, and it took a long time, but it was so valuable, and it was valuable in many ways. It was valuable to actually get the results. But we could have got the results through a survey. I could have sent a survey out and asked the right questions and got that. It was valuable in the sense that one of the things when I ask everybody, what's your favorite thing about the culture of Benish? I often would get a response like, well, it's the fact that the firm cares enough about our culture that they're doing this, that they're actually asking
the intentionality that
equity
you're
partners to invest a lot of their personal time to go do this and to try to get it right. So since that process happened, my role on the culture stuff is a lot of sort of policy setting, and then sort of creating strategic planning around how do we do the things, how do we maximize the good, how do we minimize the bad, how do we make sure we're having really transparent communication and being all the things we say we're going to be. I often will say when we talk about table stakes, I give this analogy, or I try to say and I used to think when I was first studying it maybe this is just a law firm thing, and then I expanded it well, maybe it's a professional services thing. And I really think it kind of permeates business in general. And so what I try to tell people about Benish is in order to create what I would consider the ultimate law firm, or it could be the ultimate engineering firm or the ultimate whatever, you really need three things, and you need to do them really well. And it can't just be that some people do them well and some people don't. It has to be woven into – this is the culture, woven into your culture. So I talk about a culture of excellence, being really substantively excellent at what you do, doing a really great job. And whether that's being a corporate lawyer, a real estate lawyer, a litigator, whatever, it's everybody is known for being really great. When I joined Benish 10 years ago, I think that there were a lot of excellent lawyers, but there were pockets where we're we should really be better at that. And that's a lot of why we've hired like we have. And we've gone upstream in terms of the talent level and everything. That's been phenomenal for us. But, if you're just excellent, to me, that's table stakes. Anybody who we want to represent is already represented by another law firm. And most of the top, at least 200 firms, probably more, have a really high degree of excellence for what they do. And like you said, in terms of you focus on certain aspects of the industry, we do that too. We have certain things we try to be really, really excellent at, but we don't try to be all things to all people. We're really great at real estate. We're really great at private equity. We're really great at healthcare.
Sure.
There's some things we're really good at. But I say that's table stakes to be excellent. And so the second thing I focus on is a culture of client experience. I used to call it client service, but I think it's broader than that. It's from the day you talk to the law firm and it goes through the actual execution of a deal or a case if it's litigation, all the way down to billing. You could do a really great job, and if the client has a bad experience on the billing part of it, then their experience isn't great. So it's really that is a differentiator. It's probably the number one way clients leave one law firm and pick another is because they had a bad client experience, right? And so I'm really focused on having a uniformly great culture around everybody buys into we're responsive, we're proactive, we push things forward, all that stuff. But again, that's almost table stakes because many of the biggest law firms are really great at that too.
Right.
The third component to it is the thing we think of when we talk about culture, which is it's hard to come up with a single word for it. I don't want to call it family because it sounds hokey or has negative connotations in some aspects. So I call it connection. It's how do we treat one another? Do we have each other's backs? Are we setting up an environment where people feel supported? Am I buying into the careers of the staff and the lawyers and things like that? That piece of it, I do feel if you really are all in and intentional around it, it is a massive differentiator in law firm world. Because many law firms, it does not feel warm and fuzzy. It feels like you're a cog. It feels like you're just there to bill hours and things like that. And so so we believe in the ROI of culture in that way, and it has paid off for us.
Well, and it's kind of it's community, right? You call it connection, but it's really the Benish community. And how are we going to treat one another? It's interesting. I have a lawyer friend who has made the comment to me that partnership in a law firm is often probably not the best term to use. It's a lot of times it's a bunch of hired paid mercenaries that happen to fight under the same flag, versus what is a true partnership, what is a true community connectivity amongst the people. And I agree, and I think especially in your line of work can become a huge differentiator,
Yeah.
right? And at the end of the day, it's a lot of what business is about is how do we create differentiators that allow us to recruit and retain the talent we want, to
Yeah.
secure and retain the clients that we want, all the things that help us drive the business forward.
Yeah. There's something that when we spoke a while back, you mentioned to me that I thought was really amazing that you do for your employees around coaching and executive coaching and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that impacts your culture?
Yeah, we have we do several things on the employee development front, leadership development primarily. We have some different coaching tools that we pull, but we have one primary coach that we work with who's actually a trained clinical psychologist, and when you start working with him, there's a waiver that everybody signs that basically says, most of us are trying to overcome stuff that we learned or that happened to us in the first 5 years we were on this earth. And they're the things that are holding us back in adulthood, in our professional or our relationships. And if you're working with our coach and the reality is your dad wasn't very good to you when you were little, I don't need to know that. That's not my business. I'm not interested in knowing that.
Yeah.
And that is private. But if what comes out of that is that you're going to work on setting boundaries for yourself. It's 2 examples probably don't align very well. But the point is, now that, I and the leadership team might be made aware of is hey, Jared's working on setting boundaries. So if you ask him to do something that normally he would nod and say yes to, and he says no, or there's a reason why I can't, don't lose your mind. Support him as he's, and this is, and that has been huge for us. Part of what I'll say quickly, when I said we felt like an 85-year-old business, we were a group of high integrity human beings, but highly compliant. And compliant meaning, I'm not going to tell you what you need to hear because I care about you and I don't want to hurt your feelings. And that's BS.
Yeah.
And we had to learn to be authentic. And the reality is it's like the movie Frozen. An act of true love is to tell you exactly what you need to hear, even when you don't want to hear it. Now, doing it with care and compassion and empathy versus screaming at you are 2 different things. But if I truly want you to achieve your highest calling, I need to tell you exactly what you need to hear, just like a good coach will do. We had to get out of that legacy kind of tap dancing around each other.
That's hard to change that culture. Yeah.
Very hard. But we went down that path. And when our coach started us down that path, he said, I promise you, we'll never talk about results or profitability. You watch what happens. He goes, if you have the courage to go down this journey with me, watch what happens. But we just, and the punchline of that is, because of that, we had started promoting tenure over performance. And the reality is you have to respect loyalty. We probably do it as much as anybody for all the long tenure people. Respect loyalty, promote performance.
Yeah. Yep.
And performance oftentimes is as much cultural as it is tactical or technical.
Yeah.
Put great cultural leaders in charge and watch what happens.
Yeah. That is an amazing benefit, though, that you provide to your employees. I think that I'm sure it's incredibly valued.
Yes.
And it's like one of those things. It's the right thing to do. Not every company has the resources to do it or would be willing to put the resources there. But I think that it's got to be paying off for you.
But you can do it at scale, like anything.
Yeah.
Right. It's fair isn't equal. Equal isn't fair. Guess what? Start with the leadership team.
Right.
That's where we started.
Yeah.
And then we saw enough value that we said, hey, from succession standpoint, what if we went a layer down? So I think it's, you can look at everything in life as a cost, as an expense, or as an investment, right? In most things, if you do it well, it's an investment.
Yeah.
If you don't do it well, it's a cost. Find the right partner that works for you, and for us, it's a no-brainer investment.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, I always like to end with 3 questions that are I call it the lightning round, but just I just like to get this perspective from people. So tell me, who in your mind, who's your GOAT of leadership and why?
This is like the actor's studio.
Yeah.
Right? Who is this is like asking me what my favorite song is. This is hard. I'm gonna I'm going to throw a name out there that I'm guessing the listeners don't know, but I want them to know. And I'll preface this by saying there's probably some 22-year-old first lieutenant who stormed the beach at Normandy, who's probably the greatest leader you and I would ever know. There's a guy named Clay Mathiel. Have you ever heard that name? So Clay Mathiel owned and ran the Iams pet food company. And he is a fascinating man. Like, if you can Google him, there's actually like a claymathiel.com or something. He passed a couple of years ago, but he grew Iams, and it in and of itself should be a documentary. It's a fascinating story. He ultimately sold it to Procter & Gamble for $2.3 billion. Single owner, privately held business. But Clay believed in entrepreneurs. He believed in small business. He believed in supporting people. And what he did over his career was he basically embraced and evolved a professional management model and basically said, I didn't know how to run a business. I knew how to make dog food.
Yeah.
Most small to mid-sized business owners don't know how to run a business. How do we help them? Because he said, I believe that one of the most noble acts a human being can do is put their capital at risk to create jobs and create opportunities. So I want to support the people that are taking those risks. So when he sold the business, he put down a lot of money, like tens of millions of dollars of his own money, and he formed a group called Aileron. They're down in Southwest Ohio, and it's like an airplane wing, creates lift. And they teach the professional management model to small and mid-sized businesses. And they have done a wonder for myself personally and for our business in terms of really teaching us how to lead and how to behave and how to manage. And he's done it. I think the last time I checked, they have like 4,000 companies they work with worldwide.
Wow, that's cool.
Out of this place in Southwest Ohio. So to me, I think he's a pretty amazing leader.
Yeah. All right, question 2. Is there another organization that you really admire?
Well, there's a lot.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll answer it this way. I believe in conscious capitalism. And I don't know if you're familiar. There's actually a conscious capitalism organization, but this idea that we as businesses should behave ethically while pursuing profit. So I think anybody that, whether it's overtly stated or just in their actions, practices conscious capitalism, to me is a company that I respect, because I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I honestly think that they're better when they're together. And the name, one of the big names out of conscious capitalism that comes up is like Patagonia, for instance. And again, we tend to politicize things in America, and people say, oh, they're this or that, or they're this, they lean this way. Like, I think they stand for who they are. They believe in what they are, and I believe they practice ethically while, not apologizing for making a profit.
Yep. And the last one is, if you were going to give one piece of advice on building an amazing culture, say you're talking to your daughter about she's going to have a business someday, what would you tell her about how do you create an amazing culture?
You work at it. You have to be intentional about it. I mean, we said a little bit of this before, like, you are going to have a culture, whether you choose to embrace it and lead it or not. So I think, first of all, acknowledging that, and maybe this is but it's like AA, right? 80% of the job is saying I'm an alcoholic out loud. The other 20% then is making a change. The hardest part is saying, hey, I have to lead this culture, and I'm going to do the work to do it. I think is the most important part. I said this before, your words matter, your actions matter a lot more. So model the culture that you desire. And none of us are perfect 100% of the time, but you better show up doing the things that you want the culture to be. I guess to me is really what I would, and like anything worth having, the work takes discipline, it takes consistency, and it takes sacrifice.
Yep.
And you have to be willing to do those things. And honestly, if you're not, or maybe you reach a point where you're tired, then it's time to get out of the way.
Yeah.
because somebody has to be leading that is willing to employ the discipline, consistency, and sacrifice to create and evolve the culture that the business needs.
Yeah.
You know, you never get to the top of the mountain and get to stop. You have to keep climbing.
Right. Yeah. Chris, thanks so much. This has been awesome.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
I appreciate, again, I don't know if I'm a worthy subject. Maybe I felt like hopefully it was a good dialogue.
It was awesome.
But I'm very thankful and appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Yep. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Legends of Culture. Thanks for tuning in to Legends of Culture. If you found today's conversation inspiring or insightful, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a colleague or friend. And if you're as passionate about culture as I am, I'd love to connect. Please like and subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, or reach out on LinkedIn. Together, let's learn from the legends and keep building organizations where people thrive. Until next time, I'm Jared Oakes. Keep leading with purpose and investing in your team.